All right, well, we're making an Evo 8 hood scoop fit on a Honda Civic hood, so that's obviously going to require quite a bit of love and attention, and we've been giving it that, as you can see. What I did was I actually grabbed some M6 1.0 hardware. I buffed the 10mm head off of them, so we just have a flat surface, and I went ahead and 3M panel bonded these M6 1.0s directly to the back of the scoop. Now what that's going to allow us to do is drill holes in the hood. We'll slide the M6 1.0s through the holes, and we'll be able to put a nut and washer on the back of the hood. And what that's going to do is going to allow this thing, because it is fiberglass, it's going to allow it to take the shape of our hood here, and we'll apply a little bit of heat when we do this as well to get it to sort of take the shape that we want. Hopefully the idea is the washer and the nut will bring it down and align it with our hood. This should accomplish all of those things and allow us to get this thing sucked down on the carbon fiber. I'm excited, but now this has to sit overnight. So in the morning, I'll check in on it and I'll show you guys the result. All right, well, it's the next day. As you can see, I'm in new clothes. And if you also can see, I've got a brand new merch drop t-shirt on. This is a nod to Harry's Speed Shop from Fast and Furious. We just put our little spin on it. And this is part of our new merch drop. Went ahead and grabbed inspiration from the Fast and Furious first movie for some of the merchandise that's in our new drop, and that's to go along with our Mitsubishi Eclipse modern day hero car build. And that'll be live August 27th, which is next Friday, for you guys to check out. Now, let's move on to this hood vent that we modified yesterday. Went ahead and panel bonded the screws to the back of this so that we can actually bolt this in instead of panel bonding it in, which was originally my plan. This is plan B. Everything turned out really good and should allow us to tighten up the washer and nut on the back of these really tight and suck this thing down to the hood, which is exactly what we're trying to do. Mind you, this is an Evo 8 vent for a EK hood, so they don't line up at all. We're gonna make them line up.
Sheesh! Mick, this looks great! What the hell is this? This is dope. I love watching Mick do this. He did this with the RX-7 and made that hood.
Oh yeah,
that was sick.
Hood. This is a little more involved because this is like a production. We're not gonna make a mold out of it. This is like has to look good. So this you gotta make sure you don't scratch the other side. Oh. You gotta make sure you don't warp it. Like,
oh, dry carbon? Yeah. Oh, like the hood?
Yeah. Ricky been hanging out with dogs too long. Oh my God, this sounds...
Stop it. Get some help.
It's on. I like it. It didn't move, so don't mind our beat up intercooler pipe. It's gonna get repainted. But usually when you do something like this, it has a tendency to move just a little bit from where you wanted it. So you're able to get it pretty square. It's about as straight as it's gonna be. And this thing isn't even symmetrical because all this cut around here is all hand cut or hand shaped with the cutoff wheel and disc when they finish it on the mold. So I'm actually really happy with it, being that it's a little bit of a wonky shape. It looks pretty straight. It didn't move. It's not hitting our intercooler piping at the moment. Once the motor starts doing this though, that's probably going to be a little bit of an issue, so I'm going to have to trim a little bit more maybe. But that's the look I was after. Well, I have some explaining to do. I know if you guys have been watching our previous videos, you've seen the green and blue tape all over the back bumper of this car. And that is because I wanted to take the design cue that I put in the front bumper for our oil cooler and carry it sort of throughout the build. I transferred those same type of lines with round ends onto the rear bumper. And as you can see, I've already cut this side out. It's a little difficult to see because the car's black obviously, but as you can tell, it's a cool look. It's very early 2000s in my opinion. The reason I like it is because there's a bumper that Mugen made way back in the day that had these cutouts in it. The reason for the cutouts is because the rear bumper, well, on a lot of cars, but on this car in particular, becomes a parachute at high speed. If you haven't flat paneled the bottom of the car, a lot of the air gets trapped in the rear bumper because it's basically capturing all the air coming under the car and it has nowhere to go. So by cutting these reliefs in the bumper, it allows that air and that pressure that gets built up underneath the rear end to alleviate itself by exiting out the bumper holes that we're cutting. So a lot of you guys, if you're from the sport compact era, know that back in the day, STR and a few other companies like Golden Eagle and some of these other brands, they actually had an aluminum piece that you actually just riveted or bolted onto the rear bumper and had a bunch of like elliptical holes cut out of it. I don't necessarily like that look. I think this is a lot more subtle. And again, it helps tie the front and rear together. We'll go ahead and get the other side cut out and we'll go ahead and install this same mesh that's on here. If you don't really know that's there, you don't really even notice it when the bumper's on because there's a black background behind it, our oil cooler. So it's definitely a cool look, I think, in my opinion. We'll go ahead and get the mesh cut out, painted up, panel bonded into the back of the bumper, and I think it's gonna be a nice, subtle look for the car. Okay, well, as you see, I painted the grill, tossed it in, and I went ahead and hung a couple peak bottles just to give it some weight. We're gonna let this sit overnight before we can knock out the other side, but we obviously have the other side cut and painted already. We'll let it sit overnight. I'll come back in the morning and pop the other one in and let that sit throughout the day, and this thing should be ready to toss back on the car after a little bit of cleanup. So, yep. A lot of progress today. Very soon we're gonna have some new bits that are gonna be going under here. And I can't wait for those to arrive. Hopefully they come in tomorrow. And when they do, we'll go ahead and toss them on and I'll explain to you what that is all about. I'm excited to actually get this thing on the ground. went ahead and wrapped up the rear bumper, got the mesh inserted with the panel bond. It's nice and solid, as you can see, and I think it looks great. It matches the front now. But I want to show you guys the new S1 built arms that arrived, and now I haven't been 100% transparent on what's been going on with this. You guys have seen this car on the lift with the Mugen wheels on the back from the NSX, and that's because those were 5 by 114.3, because this car initially had 5 by 114 rear hubs from S1, and that was just an error, a miscommunication between me and Son at S1, because this car is actually 4 and 100, and I wanted to keep it within the spirit of the original Honda Civic, which was 4 and 100, which is what we have in the front. So I wanted to match it in the back. Now, the problem with that is there's no such thing as a 4 on 100 28 spline hub. Well, apparently there is, because Son did it. I gotta give a huge shout out to those guys. This was many months in the making, but he and his team actually were able to fabricate their rear trailing arm with a 28 spline for a Honda S2000 drive shaft into a 4 on 100 hub, which required quite a bit of homework and fabrication to get done, and they were able to pull it off. So huge shout out to Son and his team over there at S1. If you guys are interested in doing an all-wheel drive conversion or even a rear-wheel drive conversion on your Honda Civic, you might want to look these guys up. They are very smart and they build beautiful products. All of this stuff under the rear end is from S1. I couldn't be happier. Now, these are raw materials at the moment. These are all billet pretty much, and stainless steel arms. But these are going to go off and get powder coated at some point when we get the car closer to being completed. For now, it's in mock-up phase. We've got everything bolted on. We've got full S1 built arms, camber, toe. We've got their special, basically they're like a coilover bottom hat. Basically you tell them what coilovers you're running and they send you this collar that actually screws onto your coilover, and then it creates clearance for an axle to run through here, because normally you would have sort of an H-shaped arm that would capture both sides of your lower control arm without this clearance here. So they went ahead and made a special arm that allows the axle to pass through. And now what's awesome about his coilover bottom caps is that it allows us to run this giant S2000 rear axle. And now a normal all-wheel drive rear axle on a Civic is really small. It's like a CRV style, so they're tiny. It's probably, I don't know, half of what the thickness is of this particular axle here. And you can see we've got plenty of clearance for our coilover, and we can raise and lower this car as much as we need to in order to get the fitment right. So I don't want to get too lengthy, but this is pretty rad. Huge shout out to S1 Built for getting this done for us for this special project. It's kind of a little bit outside of the wheelhouse, so I appreciate them seeing it through and getting the job done. And yeah, let's move on to the front.
Quinn quality.
Quinn before entering the van, and then when he comes out.
Yeah.
Quinn before haircut.
Kind of look like Johnny Bravo now.
Oh, hey, mama. Hey, pretty mama.
If you guys aren't familiar with the FREK, it is our rear-wheel drive K20 turbo-powered Honda Civic EK hatchback. The name FREK came from the fact that it is a front-engine, rear-drive EK, F-R-E-K. So that explains the name. We've got a bunch of new products today that came in for the car that we've been waiting on. The car is at probably about a 70 to 75% completion rate. Rywire shipped off our engine harness, as you guys had previously seen. Basically, I sent this back to him after I spec'd some of the lengths of the wiring. Because this is such a unique application, we flagged everything, sent it back to him. He made the mods we needed for it and sent it back. So now I have a really nice, concise, small harness that's gonna tuck in really nice and look beautiful on our engine. He also sent a couple other items. He sent off this scratch and dent firewall plate. And so basically what this allows us to mount this on the firewall. Our cannon plug will pass through after we undo the collar and all that, and it'll make a nice weather tight seal on our firewall. He also sent off one of his collaboration titanium hardwares. This is a bolt that is used to eliminate the Vtec solenoid oil pressure sensor. Honda has a sensor on the US model motors that puts the engine into limp mode if it sees a drop in oil pressure. We don't need that. Our ECU will be monitoring all that stuff, and we will be already in limp mode by the time that thing sees a drop in oil pressure. So this titanium bolt is a beautiful way to eliminate that sensor. So we'll be doing that as well. Another thing we got in the same package was our chassis harness. So you'll notice this one is not Raychem. It is going to be on the interior of the car, and it is just loomed with a traditional style loom. So this is all going to plug into the PDM, and that PDM, which is a power distribution module, is going to send out all the power for the chassis through this harness. Really nice piece. This is going to control our fuel pumps and everything. One last thing that came in our Rywire kit was a little gold card, a decal, which we love decals around here, and this dope FD RX-7 card. This is kind of like a Yu-Gi-Oh or Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'm not sure. This is a little young for me. Nonetheless, I think this is Ryan's influencer reward program, so he'll be sending these cards out to people that have purchased his product, and that's a cool card. Definitely love FDs, so we'll keep this around. We'll put it on display. You guys know I've been working with Rob Green over at Track Tough. He's been making a lot of custom componentry for this car. Everything that shows up from his shop is like artwork. So this is part 2 of our swirl pot setup. The first part you guys saw me mount by our fuel pressure regulator and behind our fuel rail, and it has the Dash 4 hose coming out of the top of it. Well, that's what's gonna hook into here. So that's gonna run along behind the engine. This is gonna be mounted where our factory battery used to be. And we've got a Dash 10 down here, which is going to return back to our thermostat housing here. Now this, I was actually planning to use this. This is our factory RSX K20 Water Neck. We're planning to use this. However, Rob let me know that there is a version of this that is actually aluminum, and it came on the Acura RDX. When the aluminum one shows up, I should explain the reason why we went from a plastic housing from the K20 to the RDX aluminum housing is I wanted to be able to weld on this Dash 10. Not here. I'm going to put this Dash 10 down here, and I'm going to put another one here, and that's going to allow us to run nice, beautiful soft line from Dyne PSI to connect the water system from start to finish. It'll all be AN, which is super rad, and get rid of these press fit potential failure points. And Rob also sent us his fancy thermostat housing. We've already put our RSX thermostat in with the bleed hole at 12 o'clock. It's a great solution, and it looks beautiful. It's gonna last the life of the car. The other thing I love about Rob's stuff is he always includes factory gaskets. The factory gaskets to me go a long way. And the last piece that arrived, this actually came from overseas from the boys at Funk Motorsport. Funk is the only ones that are offering a G25 550 Garrett turbo heat shield that bolts directly on and is fitted for our small frame turbo. I felt this was a necessity because this is gonna help keep our under hood temps under control by keeping the heat in the hot side of the turbo. And it also came with a couple springs instead of safety wiring these together, which we would traditionally do. Funk does include springs to spring this on. So that'll be a nice addition to the engine bay, and it'll help keep some of the heat out of the engine bay and also off of our motor mount, which is very close to the hot side of the turbo. So, well, that's it for the new products. Let's move on to getting some of this stuff installed. That's our Track Tough swirl pot installation. I did have to go ahead and put a hole in the hood for that to pop through, but again guys, I can't tell you enough how critical it is for this to be the highest point of our system. So I wanted to get that sitting pretty high in the engine bay. As you can see, it sits pretty even with the strut tower, top, and wiper cowl. So all in all, a great location, a great product. All right, well, as you guys know, I introduced earlier in the video this Acura RDX water neck, which is made out of aluminum, versus our plastic K20 water neck that we have here. And I'm gonna go ahead and flatten this out. As you can see here, we've got two different heights. From a threading purposes, that's good because it offsets the threads and allows you to get them both tight. But the problem is our Dash 10 fittings, actually, one's gonna fit right in there and I'm gonna press it in. and then the other one's gonna fit in this hole. And so in order for Evan to be able to weld on the back side here, I need to get rid of this collar, because we can't flush weld it because it's way too small to fit in there unless I built a base plate for it and we welded it on like that. It's just easier for me to run it through the bandsaw, lop this collar off, and then we can weld them both at the same height, and there's plenty of room between the two to be able to tighten an AN-10 AN fitting on there. So all right, well, that's a wrap on today's FREK video. I hope you guys liked the installment. We are making some progress, and I'm excited about that. So stay tuned. The next FREK video will be chock full of upgrades to this car, as we're going to continue to keep working on it until it is completed. I cannot wait to fire this car up. Thank you guys. Hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment down below. Thumbs up are always nice. We'll see you in the next one.